Thanks for joining me today. Hope you enjoyed the last episode, which was all about having all the gear and no idea, and how to kind of figure out technically what you should and shouldn't be doing in photography. Just like to point out that despite the fact that cameras have many technical capabilities and you should understand what a camera's doing and why, I have an ethos that I've learned over the years that rules are set to be broken. And once you've figured out all the photographic rules, by rules I mean understanding what a good exposure is. And by good I don't mean a subjective good, I mean is it overexposed or underexposed? And within that layer, what we're looking for is detail. So if you've got highlights, bright areas of a shot, are there detail in them? If there aren't, then you've overexposed. Same with the shadow areas and mid-tone areas. Are there details there? If not, then technically it's underexposed. So a good exposure or a correct exposure should lay somewhere in between those kind of extremes. And when I talk about all the gear, no idea, that's kind of what I'm saying you should be aiming for. Understanding that within those parameters, whatever you're photographing, whether it's people in the studio, whether it's animals out on a farm, whether it's the sky, whatever it is you're doing, you should be looking at those parameters. So more than that, you should understand how to get to those parameters, what you have to do with the gear you've got to get to those parameters and hit those parameters. Once you understand all that, then really to make interesting, creative and sexy photography or photographs, you kind of have to abandon that. And by abandon it, I mean you have to understand that sometimes the creative, the subjective, the exciting, the wow lays outside of those technically correct parameters. And it took me quite a long time in my photography career, probably, I don't know, I'm probably going to say around 8 or 9 years before I started really understanding that, because I started my photography career thinking that to be a good photographer who could earn money and create regular good photographs, I had to be technically good. And if I wasn't technically good, how could I ever compete? So the first, 2/3 of a decade of my photography career was making sure everything I did was aiming towards technical perfection. And around 2014-15, when I decided I was going to do a master's degree, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do for my master's degree. I just felt at the time that I wanted to learn more. A part of it was kind of like the job I was in. I'd started lecturing at college, and the college were kind of, saying to me, you really should have a qualification in your field to excel as a lecturer, which is possibly correct, possibly not, but I had a lot of industry experience which I felt was worth more than the college badge, and it turned out I was right in that. But from an academic standpoint, I guess they wanted their teachers at that point to align with academia and have the academic badges to prove that the teachers could hack it. So there's no way I was going to go back to scratch and prove myself with a level 3 qual or even level 4, 5 and 6 qual, because the decade or so I got of industry experience then was way above that level, both academically and technically. So I looked at what the options were, and the only option really was to do a master's degree. And by now universities were accepting industry experience in lieu of level 3 to 6 qualifications to get a master's degree. So that's what I did. But really I wanted it to expand my mind and look at the wider scope of photography. So initially I had this idea I was going to do the masters to kind of improve my portrait photography, and I'll talk you through that as we get into that suddenly. But what happened was it took me in a completely different field altogether. But I had a lot of realizations as I was doing the master's degree, and some of them quite profound, I guess, but most of them were just, quite often when you're looking for answers, for changes, you spend that much time looking for them, you can't see them. And the answers for me turned out to be quite simple. And I'll talk you through that as we go through today's episode. But really what I want to lean on today was following on from last week's discussion about how really you should learn your kit and not rely on technology, understand what you're doing. Today I want to talk about pretty much abandoning that and going a bit left field and letting the camera move and play under your control and knowing why you're doing it, but seeing then and not relying so much on technology or technical brilliance to get much more interesting and varied pictures. So that's where we're going to go today. So I'm going to start off by, I dug a load of pictures out this morning just so we could go through some of them like chronologically. And I thought I'd start around about the year 2014, maybe 15 with these, 2014, where I got to a point where technically I was as good as I was probably ever going to be. And by that I mean I could work on a location, I could work in a studio, I could use natural light, I could use flashlight, I could use strobe light, I could combine all those lights together to make what we would call a technically brilliant exposure. Good light, good tones, good colour balance, good highlights with detail, good shadows with detail. And I'd become very proficient at that. And it wasn't until a little later on that I'd realised that it was that was actually the problem for me. I was concentrating far too much on technical brilliance and not nearly enough on capturing the moment, or how can I put it, or linking, communicating, getting that communication between yourself and the city or yourself and the sky, whatever it was. I was too busy looking for technical brilliance. I was often missing the moment. And when I first started my master's degree in 2015, I spoke to my supervisor quite a bit about this. And although he didn't push me in that direction much, the consensus was being a technical commercial photographer is bullshit, and all the good stuff lay elsewhere. And it probably took me 6 months of actually doing a master's degree before I settled on my project and settled on accepting that and not relying so much on what I already knew, and throwing a bit of that caution to the wind in that respect, and making sure I was more thinking about what I wanted rather than how to get it, if that makes sense. So my initial idea for my master's degree was to keep shooting portraits and people, because I recently started up an online magazine called Ascenders Magazine, and I thought if I align it to that, it's not going to feel like a load more work. If I do another project separate to the magazine, it's going to be a load more work, and I didn't want to do that. And I also felt that my portraits of the time were not quite as that's interesting as what people like David Bailey, Richard Avedon's were. And that's where I wanted my work to sit in. I wanted my work to be in that kind of that borough, if you like, where people would look at my work and go, oh, that's a Lance Burkitt shot, and oh, it's really interesting, look at that connection. And people were paying me to do the portraits. I wasn't struggling to get portrait work, I was getting a lot of work, but I personally didn't feel that they were really sucking the moment out of people, and I wasn't quite sure what I was doing wrong. Was it my approach? Was it me? Am I an arsehole? Did people pretend that they were getting on? I don't know. I couldn't work out what it was, but all I did know is I was very technically proficient. So I'd spend a lot of time making sure the lights were right, making sure everything was in the right place, making sure composition was square, in line, all that kind of stuff. And if we look through a section of my pictures at the time, this is Cheryl Baker from Bucks Fizz fame. These pictures, I mean, I still like them today. They're great pictures. Cheryl and her agent love them. We shot them at a hotel in Sheffield whose name escapes me, but we did them in an afternoon. Myself and Cheryl and an hairdresser called Olivia Wegg. It was brilliant. And these were shot on my own Canon 7D, 125th of a sec for the flash, f6.3 ISO 400, to combine a bit of natural light that was filling in from the hall, and just to get her looking like she was in a commercial setting. Semi-businesswoman like there, she was appearing in a play at the time, and this was her kind of like behind the scenes kind of stuff during the day. It's a nice shot. It's nothing special, but it's a nice shot. It's clean, it's well lit, it's well exposed. The colour balance is good. Cheryl looks great. She's nice and centred. Everything's sharp. Shot at f6.3 to get a little bit of blowout in the focus. So the further we travel out from Cheryl's face, we get a little bit of blur, which is nice. Real shallow depth of field from her knees to the cup. So I was happy with all that. Technically, it's a good photograph. There's nothing wrong with it as a photograph. But I was starting to feel like when I was looking back at around this time that I needed to get something more. There was something missing. Again, technically, good shot, well composed, nice and centred. We got a little bit of the place she's in, so you can see she's on a stairwell which leads outside. There's some nice natural light coming in. I had a small flash unit off to the right hand side, which filled in that side again to try and keep it making it look quite natural, but also to give a little shadow to make it nice and 3D. Again, it's a nice, safe, straight commercial shot. It wouldn't look out of place in Hello magazine or some shit like that. Again, we went outside, did some portraits, and again, I shot them quite bright to give that summer feel. It's in focus. She's nice and sharp on her eyes. Technically, it's a great headshot. Is it the best headshot I've ever taken? No. Was she happy with it? Over the moon. I'm just feeling that at this point I was starting to need to do something else, and I wasn't sure what it was. I was frustrated actually because I knew I was good technically, and even though, as I discussed in the last episode, I didn't have the best, most expensive equipment you could ever have, I was getting good shots out of pretty average equipment, and clients were happy. But I was starting to feel like I wasn't getting the buzz that I wanted from them, and I then felt that other people wouldn't get the buzz. Again, this is the fabulous actor and singer Joe McGann. Joe's great subject, would do anything you want, would just sit there, would emote for you. It was great. I had a good rapport, worked with him for about an hour. He was appearing in something at Derby Theatre, so I went down to Derby to shoot behind the scenes. This is in the green room while I was waiting, and I enjoyed the shoot. We used a bit of natural light and a bit of fill, a bit of flash, a bit of everything really to get these shots, and Joe was quite natural sitting there. From a composition standpoint, there's no wrong with it. It's good. His expression is good. It's nice and sharp. It's in focus. The exposure is good, and I like it as a shot. There's nothing wrong with it as a shot. I just was feeling like when I look back at this set that there's still something missing. This is not edited. This is straight off the camera, this shot. And a little bit of work with a raw file just to take the highlights off the background to fix it. But as a standard shot, that's pretty decent. It's in focus. It's nicely lit. It's evenly lit. Joe looks great. Nice expression. There's nothing wrong with it as a portrait. But again, I was feeling like there's something missing. There's just a bit of something missing, and I couldn't put my finger on what it was. Bearing in mind and ensuring all the time that I'm technically great, I'm doing everything technically correct. Again, this is an actor, Jerry Wiley, lovely guy Jerry, very, very amiable. He's appeared in more things than you can imagine, so you probably do recognise his face. But again, we had a real good rapport. We got on really well, but I spent a lot of time technically setting up shots for the lighting, so the lighting was interesting. And Jerry's got a great face for photographing, for portraits. So I did a set in colour and black and white of these, and I love them both. And the black and whites are quite mysterious. And I went to the trouble on these of really blowing out the shadows, because again, like I've discussed on previous shows, I'm hiding something, and I like my shadows to be real dark. So I actually quite like the picture as a photograph. I quite like this set. And prior to me figuring out what I was doing wrong or what I needed to do differently, these are probably the closest that I got to being happy that I'd shot something that people would look at and go, now we get what he's doing.